All right, hello and welcome to a short presentation on developing with Splunk Dashboards. My name is Nusair. I'm one of the PMs for the Splunk Dashboard Framework, and I've been part of Splunk for more than 3 months as a full-timer, and I also interned the last summer. I'm happy to have the opportunity to provide an overview on the latest of what we have to offer regarding custom development specific to Splunk Dashboards. So this presentation is meant to give a high-level overview of the state of development with Splunk in the past and how it is today, with a glimpse of how it specifically relates to dashboarding. We will cover how developing dashboards was for some small dashboards, as well as the new Splunk SDK, and developing now for the new Splunk Dashboard Framework. I cannot stress enough that this presentation will not cover deep technical details, and for those in the audience who are keen to get their hands on everything I talked about, there will be some documentation linked at the end. I would also like to thank the great folks on the SWP team, all the engineers, designers, and product managers, as well as everyone helping out outside who assisted in this project, in this presentation, the content in this presentation, as well as our documentation and our packages. So let's get started. I think it's no surprise that developers do a lot in Splunk. We have a bright development community, and between private and public apps, there are many ways developers are utilizing Splunk to help them bring data to everything. We can see there's over 1,900 apps on Splunk base for people, whether they're app developers themselves or just want to consume these apps. Splunk base provides a great platform to share what you create and also see what others have created. And beyond that, there are over 100,000 private applications. So organizations who may not want to publicize what they create because what they have made is very specific to a workflow they have in their organization, and it's a part of how they use Splunk. And these numbers just show how bright and how engaged our development community is, and we hope to see these numbers increase in the future. So how do they do that? Here's an overview of building Splunk apps today. As we can see in the backend, we have our SDKs for Python, Java, and Node. We also have some APIs and tools. And for the front end specifically, simple XML and XML extensions relate to with the classic dashboards. We also have a Splunk JS, which is a set of JS tools for those who want environments for Splunk app development more closely related with JavaScript. And we also have what we released very recently is the Dashboard Studio, which is our new framework specific to Splunk Core and Splunk Enterprise, which allows the creation of dashboards with the JSON instead of XML. And it's our new framework and provides a lot of tools and a new look on how to create dashboards. So how do those previous tools, especially the legacy ones, affect dashboards? So here's an overview of classic dashboard development. It's a fairly linear path between going from the basic UI editor, so our what you see is what you get drag and drop editor, to transitioning to the XML source, where you can actually edit the XML code, and it unlocks a bit more capabilities that may not actually be seen in our UI editor. And then for those who have done this before, you may know about having JavaScript and CSS extensions on top of the XML source, which is the ability to have a separate script create custom functionality that you can see in the dashboard. And we say it's fairly linear because for a regular user who may be new or maybe is not too technically savvy, this is kind of the path that they could progress in. And it's very linear in terms of technical skills. And also it has the ability to kind of traverse back and forth. So you can go from JavaScript to CSS extensions back to the UI editor, and they work seamlessly together. So on the right, we have some screenshots as to how this all looks. So we have our what you see is what you get drag and drop editor, basically, and we also have the XML source. And if you want to go further beyond, you can have a IDE, write some code, and build JavaScript and CSS on top of that. So like I mentioned, a lot of benefits of this model. Smooth progression between editing experiences. You can seamlessly traverse through the layers. Adding extensions does not directly hinder the first 2 layers. And also you can build on top of existing Splunk apps. So if you have such a reporting on Enterprise and you have a simple XML dashboard on that application, you can, if you have access to the Splunk environment as a whole, you can add scripts which can be used in the dashboards in that app natively. So it doesn't hinder the out-of-the-box capability that you already get. However, as apps sophistication increases, we can see that this model for Splunk development may not provide the right tools There's a lack of reusability of custom extensions across multiple dashboards. So some of these extensions can be very specific to a certain dashboard. And also it's some outdated technology. There's a longer learning curve, and it's difficult to attract new talent nowadays. Also, custom dashboards don't necessarily represent a pro code experience. It's more along the lines of hacking certain functionality. You kind of max out what you can do with the out-of-the-box tools, and whatever is missing, you can kind of just hack it together with the JavaScript CSS. So now we have the updated Splunk UI SDK. We also refer to this as the Splunk Web Platform. It contains the Dashboard Framework, which is the framework for advanced data storytelling across platforms and applications. It also comes with the rich visualization library, which has visualizations, interactivity, configuration, behavior, and much more. And we also have Splunk UI, which is our user interface library, which contains design components, tools, and utilities for UI development. And with this new set of tools, we also want to follow strict development principles. So we aim for everything that we deliver to be modern, accessible, reliable, and also be part of a component set. So it's composable, encapsulated, and it's modular. And we try to hold ourselves to these development principles and provide the best experience possible for our developers. So how does this new paradigm kind of, how's it different compared to the previous paradigm, previous set of tools? We can kind of separate it. And for those who have attended Dev 1134A, you might have seen a different type of explanation for this new paradigm. This is the more basic version of what was explained in that conf talk. But we go from basic single components. So we have our buttons and we have our cards, and you can build a bunch of single components into what you can call interactive composites. So a set of components that relate to a specific workflow or a specific tool. So you can see that in this time range picker. So a lot of expandable rows and a lot of controls to control the time range. Also, we can see in this form for events, we can go from top values, have a few links related to some certain actions. And when we work with both basic single components and interactive composites, and we want to create a toolkit for something specific, such as dashboarding, and we also look at other libraries such as Splunk visualizations, we can create a full framework such as the Splunk Dashboard Framework, which provides developers a set of tools to create dashboards in their own applications. So let's take a look at the new Splunk Dashboard Framework. This is what we can describe more as a full development experience in a React-based framework. So where we had a linear progression between the UI editor, JSON source, and then going to custom development functionality, you can see that it's not too much of a linear path this time around. You still have your UI editor and you still have your JSON source, and they behave fairly similar as they did in classic dashboards. However, if you want to take it a step further, it is quite a larger step forward. It requires much more technical skills. You can have a lot more functionality because you are developing essentially a React-based app. And also because of this, you're also creating your own application. So it's not on search and reporting. You can have your own isolated application on Splunk Enterprise and have your own dashboards within that application. So you can see in the new framework, and those of you who have interacted with it before, it's very similar in the sense that there is still a JSON source editor, so a source editor as well as a UI editor with a configuration panels and tools to help you adjust what you make directly from the UI. However, if you want to take it a step further and create your own application, you can actually go and go into a code editor and create a React-based application using the tools that we provide. And we can see there's a lot more functionality. We can use Dashboard Core, and we can use another React component that integrates with Dashboard Core. So when we create our final dashboard, there can be many components that don't come out of the box from the Dashboard Framework. So with this new Dashboard Framework, we can combine native functionality that's provided in the Splunk visualization library, so the predefined tokens and also the inputs and interactivity that come out of the box. And we can also build on top of that custom functionality. So we can create custom visualizations, inputs, and interactivity. We can also utilize Splunk UI components inside the dashboard that are otherwise not included. And we can also use third-party React packages. So any public packages or packages that you yourself develop, you can use that and interact with the Splunk Dashboard Framework with that React package. And both of these together will create a custom dashboard. So let's take a look at a simple use case. So here I have an application called Moto Dashboard, and it is on Splunk Enterprise. And when I open this specific tab called Moto Dashboard, I see a dashboard, which is actually, for those of you who attended Conf 19, it is based on another example done by SWP engineers about a game server tracking for Buttercup games, and it helps detect cheaters amongst the player base in various servers across the country. So we can see that there's some charts here, very basic charts, and this is, again, out of the box. In the background, we have a custom image. So this image has this map of the United States, as well as the legend for colors, and we have a few single value visualizations. And again, since this is a full dashboard, I can actually interact with the visit. So on hover over, I can see the underline, I can see some values in these spark lines. However, where we introduce some custom functionality, and this is not included out of the box in Splunk Dashboard Studio, is that if I click on one of these circles, I get a modal popping up. And since I clicked on the Northwest circle, I get a table of the possible cheaters in the Northwest region. And in this table, I can expand and see the name of the cheater and also their email. I can see their score. I can also see which state that they're playing in, and I have the option to flag them. So I can see here that Rylan, a score of 999, pretty aggressive. So I want to flag him for some suspicious behavior. So I can just select his row and click flag, and now he's marked as flag. And if this was part of a larger infrastructure, this flag can probably trigger some further actions in my application that can deal with the cheater. So let's take a look at how this works. When developing with the new Splunk UI SDK, you have the option of using the Splunk create package to create an application with a React components and a Splunk app already in the same project. The two packages it develops, firstly, Moto Dashboard is my Splunk app, and Moto Component is my React components. If I open Moto Dashboard, there's source code very similar to how a regular Splunk app looks like today. If I go to my dashboard folder, I have some important components that render the dashboard. Firstly is definition.json. This contains all my charts, all my ellipses, and where they're placed. And if you look closely, there is an event handler for my Splunk.ellipse is with the types ellipse.click. This is then referenced again in the JSX file for the actual dashboard. There are import statements for all the libraries required, most important one being dashboard core, which is actually responsible for rendering the dashboard. And then also have my definition as well as the Moto components that I'll be showing later. This function has a smaller function called handle dashboard event. This function is responsible for looking for the ellipse.click event type. And when it is clicked, it will open the modal and grab the viz ID from that modal. So from that ellipse that is clicked. So if I click the Northwest ellipse, it would give me the viz ID, and I know that it's the Northwest server. Likewise, there's also a handle request close for that modal. In the return function, I have the Splunk theme providers and the dashboard context providers. They're not really used extensively here because I'm not importing something like a geo registry or having a custom theme for my Splunk theme. I have my Moto components, so it has the open modal, gets the region, and it also has the handle request close. And then in my dashboard core, I have the width and height of the dashboard, the presets. So I'm using the enterprise presets, which means I'm using the same viz types and interactivity that is provided with the Splunk Dashboard Framework on enterprise. I don't have anything custom in terms of visualizations or interactivity types outside of the functions that are defined as part of the dashboard core plugin, which is the dashboard handle dashboard events. And lastly, I also have the definition. So taking a closer look, I then pass this into index.jsx, which has a layout, and I just pass in the dashboard example. And it gives it a page title called custom modal, fixes the layout, and also hides the footer. just standard components of this. Taking a closer look at the motor components, if I go into the source code, I have two parts. One is the actual table. So in this table, there is a grouping of regions to northwest, southwest, northeast, and southeast, depending on certain states. And there is the actual table itself. So there are the headers, as well as the actual data. So the players themselves, their scores, their states, email, the flag states, and whether or not they're selected or disabled. This data, depending on the state that the user belongs to, they would show up in the corresponding region. And in the modal component itself, there is a, basically depending on the region that the user is in, that region gets passed into the modal header, the modal header. And I know that if it's Northwest, it will say Northwest region shooters. There's also a bit of styling here, as well as also giving the region with the data table. And again, like I mentioned before, like I showed before, this gets passed into the dashboard itself. So that is a very, very basic, very non-technical review of how the application is actually made. Going back, you can check out our docs to get started at splunkui.splunk.com. There's also many Conf21 talks. Much of this presentation was derived from Dev 1134A, where the principal software engineer for Splunk UI gives an overview of the new Splunk UI framework. There's also 1595B as well as 1328C, which go a bit deeper into specific use cases on how to apply the Splunk UI framework, Splunk Dashboard, and Splunk visualizations. The example I showed you, again, if you want to go very deep in the code, much deeper than I went, is on GitHub at github.com/Splunk/Dashboard tutorial 2. And for those who may want to learn from the ground up, there's also a corresponding tutorial in our documentation. And lastly, feel free to contact us in these contact channels provided. Thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed.